say if he was gonna make it?
They said that they're hoping that he's going to wake up.
On March 14, 2011, 2-year-old David Galarraga was rushed to St. Luke's Hospital in Jacksonville. The atmosphere had shifted from routine to panic, as the toddler who had arrived with visible fatal injuries to the head was unresponsive and barely clinging to life. The boy in the footage, who was brought for interrogation to find out about the incident, was his eldest stepbrother, Cristian Fernandez. His face showed clear worry, not for himself, but for whether his baby brother would survive the devastating injury or not, as doctors tried their best to save the baby boy. The troubling details from his mother's questioning session didn't match the story that Cristian was telling. The mother, Bianella Susana's explanation, hinted towards a much greater horrifying reality that involved child neglect and abuse. Had David truly suffered a tragic accident, or was there something far more sinister behind his injuries? As the police were called to investigate the incident of a simple fall from the bed, the emerging details started painting a picture that had never been witnessed before in Florida's criminal justice history.
But she wasn't home when it happened? Did your mom do something to David?
As the truth about whether the mother was actually at home began to surface, the case of an accidental injury turned into a chilling crime that nobody could have ever imagined. The 12-year-old Cristian was babysitting his siblings at the house when David was reported to have fallen from a bunk bed and then taken to the hospital. With a cast wrapped around his broken leg, David's eyes had rolled back in his head. Despite life support, David never regained consciousness and tragically passed away 2 days after the incident.
The first one says you do not have to make a statement or say anything. Do you understand what that means, Cristian?
Oh, yeah. No.
Okay. This means you don't have to talk to me when I talk to you. And you don't have to tell me anything, and you don't have to say anything, but you can say something. So it just tells you that you don't have to. Do you understand what that means? So I'll read it again. You do not have to make a statement or say anything. So that means you don't have to talk to me, but I want you to talk to me, but you don't have to talk to me. Okay?
As the incident involved minors, the officers knew reaching the truth through their accounts would be difficult. As per the laws in Florida, the police don't require a parent's consent to interrogate a minor. The minors can decide on their own if they want to answer the questions or not. The detective took a friendly approach while explaining Cristian his constitutional rights. She used a soft tone and easy words to make sure he understood all the rights. However, despite providing solid evidence that solved all the mysteries of the case, the judge later discarded Cristian's recorded questioning session as he appeared confused about his Miranda rights. The detective began her interrogation by asking Cristian about the blue cast that his younger brother wore on his leg the day he was taken to the hospital. The cast, extending from his left hip to his foot, was meant to treat an injury David had suffered back in January 2011.
You said before, in January, he got hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had broken his leg, little David.
Mm-hmm.
And how did he break his leg in January?
By yoga.
Yoga?
Mm-hmm.
And what room were you guys in?
In our room.
Okay. You share a room with him?
No, he always goes to she's always sleeping with my mom.
Okay, so he sleeps with your mom.
Oh.
And you and your 5-year-old brother and your 4-year-old sister all share a room.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, y'all were in your room doing yoga?
Mm-hmm.
Were y'all watching a video or something, or?
No.
Cristian stated that he and his siblings were experimenting with yoga poses in their room, and he bent David's leg to try a position which led to the injury. But the reality was much darker. Cristian had deliberately attacked his baby brother.
So he was sitting like this, and then how did you do his legs so we can understand what happened?
Like this.
And then what else did you do with his little legs?
And like this. And that's it.
You pushed him back?
Mm-hmm.
However, the mother had to lie, claiming the injury occurred at the playground. She feared that the Department of Children and Family Services would get involved and remove her children from her care. Cristian was the only witness that the detectives could rely on. David's injuries were alarming, and the doctors needed more details about the incident to increase his chances of survival. So, as part of the investigation, the police searched the house to uncover what had really caused David's skull fracture. The cramped apartment had 2 bedrooms. The children's room, where the incident took place, was shared by Bianella's 3 children. As the officers entered the room, they were shocked by the dark bloodstains scattered throughout the room on the carpet, pillows, and bedsheet. The carpet was covered with vomit, while diapers and wipes were found on the lower bunk bed. As the officers scanned the room further, they noticed more stains on the cabinet and even on the curtain in the bathroom. The investigators realized that this case was far more complex than it first appeared. The interrogation with Cristian, which lasted about an hour and a half, gradually wore him down. The detective's good cop approach softened him after sticking up to his initial story about David falling from the bunk bed. He finally cracked. Cristian confessed the truth. What really happened in that room? And more importantly, where was their mother when it all went down?
This side of his head is really injured up with a lot of bruising and swelling. So, and his nose is really swollen up. So, it had something else happened that night tonight besides just books falling. So tell me about what else happened at Carl.
After that happened, I was with him.
Okay, so he never fell off the bunk bed? No. Okay. So he never hit his head on the bed?
No.
Okay. So did you do anything for him to make him hit his head?
What do you mean? Like, I pushed him?
Yeah. Did you push him tonight?
To the bed?
No. Did you do anything for his head to hit anything tonight?
Well, we were just carrying books, and then it fell on him.
Right. And what else then?
And then I took all the books away from him, and then he was sleeping.
Well, he didn't get those head injuries just from books. So that's why we need to know the whole story, because that can't happen from just books. You know what I mean? That's not the truth, Cristian, is it? It's okay. I just need to know the truth.
At first, Cristian kept changing his story about how his brother got the head injuries. The detective knew something was suspicious when he claimed that David had been walking around with books on his head and fell under the weight of them, which resulted in fatal head injuries.
I know that you told all the officers and everybody that he climbed up the ladder on the bunk bed and fell, but that wasn't the truth, was it? Okay. Just like probably carrying the books and it falling on his head, and then he went to sleep. It's probably not the truth, is it? You know, do you feel bad about what happened tonight? Is that why it's hard for you to tell me? Yes. Okay. And I understand that. I can see why it's really hard for you to tell me. Why'd you push him? How do you?
I pushed it, and
Okay. So you pushed him with your hand into the shelf.
With this revelation, the mystery around David's horrific injuries turned into a chilling reality. The question was no longer what happened, it was why it happened. Cristian's confession brought some clarity, but the answers to the full truth were yet to be discovered. It was now the mother's turn to reveal what she had been hiding. The findings from the initial questioning sessions exposed Bianella's unbothered attitude towards the serious injuries of her 2-year-old. Her response that she had gone through worse things than her toddler did was pointing towards something abnormal. All these interrogations happened when David was fighting for his life in hospital.
I understand why you lied in the beginning, because you don't want your son to get in trouble for something he didn't mean to do, I guess, correct? But then you told him to lie, and then you lied and just got all out of hand. And don't you think it'd just been easier just to tell DCF? My son didn't. It was an accident.
No, because it wasn't easy for me to tell DCF, and look where I am now. It's not easy.
This was the moment when the cracks in her story started to show. As the officer pressed her on David's leg injury from January, her answers grew more uncertain, revealing the inconsistencies she had tried to hide. On March 14, 2011, at around 9 a.m., Bianella Susana hurried to her home, her heart racing after receiving a call from Cristian that David had been unconscious after falling from the bunk bed. Because of the fear of children and family services, Susana hesitated to call for immediate medical help. At 10:54 a.m., the first sign of panic appeared. Someone in Bianella's apartment typed into one of the two laptops, searching for information on what happens when a person gets knocked out. The internet history later revealed that at 2:38 p.m., another desperate search was made for concussions on children. This search on the laptop was then followed by unconscious for hours. Then by 3:07 p.m., Bianella searched about St. Luke's Hospital in Jacksonville. The web browsing hadn't stopped till 4:05 p.m. Despite these alarming searches, the hours were dragged on with no action. The unsettling behavior of Bianella further came to light when the 200-page court document revealed that while her toddler lay unconscious with a bleeding head, Susana spent crucial hours using YouTube, downloading music and saving some screensavers. It wasn't until 5:25 p.m., more than 7 hours later, that Bianella finally decided to head to the hospital. But by then, the damage was done. Had David Galarraga been treated sooner, his life could have been saved. His condition was so critical that he had to be taken by air ambulance to the hospital. Bianella, who was 25 at the time, confessed to investigators that she had left Cristian, David, and her other 2 children alone at home. Before ultimately confessing, the mother of 4 initially lied to the police in an attempt to save herself from accountability. At first, she claimed she was present at the house when David got hurt, but she later changed the story, saying she was running errands when Cristian called her to get home. She then falsely narrated that she applied ice on David's head as first aid while looking for concussion treatment online. Following the discovery of blood in the apartment, Bianella was charged with manslaughter and taken into custody, while Cristian was brought in for questioning. This was the investigation that led to his confession and his arrest on the charges of assault and first-degree murder. The weight of the guilt pushed Cristian to give up on his shaky cover-up story of bunk bed and eventually break down. In a moment that turned brotherly love into something dark, Cristian slammed his little brother's head against a bookcase. It was a fit of rage that had been boiling inside him. The anger made him hit his baby brother's head again and again against the shelf, until little David passed out from head trauma. While describing his horrifying act, Cristian said that he took out his frustration on his baby brother by beating him up. Once his anger episode was over, reality began to strike him. He then picked up David's unconscious body to lay it on the bed before calling his mother for help. Despite the confession, Cristian insisted he never planned to kill his brother. All it took were the detective's kind words and sympathy for him to feel comfortable and open up. In that vulnerable space, he shared the chilling details of the crime he had committed. The memories came rushing back, and he talked about the rage that had consumed him. As in the case of the majority of juvenile criminals, his anger was also connected to the trauma of his past. As the detective stepped out, leaving him alone for a while in the dimly lit interrogation room, Cristian's body language began to shift. At first, he sat with his head buried in his hands, a sign of him being uneasy. Soon, he started running his hand through his hair before twisting the hair locks around his fingers. His posture remained tense, while his facial expressions hardened with seriousness. It was at this moment that Cristian realized the gravity of what he had done. As time passed, his body language changed once again, this time showing the restless signs of boredom. After all, he was just a child. His attention wandered as he began fidgeting with the nearby cabinets and the socket on the wall. For a brief moment, he had let the distractions of the room make him forget the harsh reality of his confession. His 2-year-old brother was still fighting for his life at this moment. When the detective pushed him to explain what had triggered him, Cristian took no time to reveal the horrifying incidents of abuse he had suffered at the hands of his stepfather. The anger that had erupted wasn't just a passing outburst, it was a flood of buried trauma combined with the parental duties of looking after his 3 siblings. Cristian himself was a victim of child neglect and abuse. Cristian's childhood was nothing short of a heartbreak. It was his parents who were responsible for turning him into the monster who showed no mercy, while his 2-year-old brother. Born as a result of teenage pregnancy, Cristian came into the world when his mother, Bianella, was just 11 years old. She had him with her 20-year-old boyfriend, Jose Fernandez. She had an unhealthy obsession with Jose as she searched for the love and affection in him that a parent is supposed to provide to their child. But he left her right after Cristian was born. Navigating motherhood on her own as a 12-year-old child was bound to have a deep effect on her mentally. Jose, who had taken advantage of Bianella, was later given a 10-year probation for sexual assault. This is a chilling example of how the generational cycle of child neglect spirals into tragic and horrifying outcomes, much like what we see in this devastating case. Bianella then found herself a new man named Luis Galarraga. David was born out of this marriage. Soon after tying the knot with Bianella, Luis began to assault Cristian. This was the main reason that ignited a deep-seated resentment in 12-year-old Cristian, a fire that burned so fiercely within him that he took the revenge of his stepdad from his baby brother. When the police learned about the abuse, they wasted no time in issuing an arrest warrant for Luis Galarraga. However, before they could bring him into custody, he took a drastic step that would leave a lasting scar on his family. The thought of spending the rest of his life behind bars made him shoot himself in the head. To make the horrific act more disturbing, he pulled the trigger right in front of his children. Adding to the miserable early life of Cristian, one of his cousins used to abuse him sexually at the age of 8. Born in Miami in 1999, Cristian was raised by an emotionally unavailable family. Despite being surrounded by people who were supposed to care for him, his childhood was full of horrors. When Cristian was 2 years old, both he and his mother were sent into foster care after he was found wandering the streets naked at 4 a.m. near a motel where his grandmother was meant to be watching over him. But his grandmother was busy doing pain. The sexual exploitation and abuse at the hands of loved ones developed psychopathic tendencies in him. Slowly, he turned into an apathetic who felt no pain while hurting others. He started by hurting animals, kittens, taking sexual advances towards his class fellows, and eventually indulging in acts of molestation at school. He had learned to suppress his emotions. A counselor quoted that Cristian once said, "You gotta suck up feelings and get over it." The insane twists in this case don't end here. His 5-year-old brother dropped another shocking revelation after Cristian was put in prison for first-degree murder. He told the detectives that Cristian had sexually abused him by asking him to take his pants off and then put the 5-year-old's private part in his mouth.
When she comes in, I'm gonna I want you to know that I'm not here to talk about that, okay? It's something totally different that I need to discuss with you, okay?
The officer wanted to inquire if he had actually sexually abused his brother. The transcript of the interrogation revealed that Cristian denied the allegations. The officer tried to find out from where he had learned about such disturbing sexual behavior. His hesitant answers were pointing towards his cousin as the source. It became painfully clear that he had been exposed to explicit sexual activities at a very young age. The officer made sure to make him understand that he was a victim of sexual abuse as well. The amount of torture Cristian has suffered and caused is overwhelming. The youngest ever murderer in Florida was tried as an adult. While his actions are undeniably wrong, it's impossible to ignore that he stands as both a victim and an offender in this tragic story. Bianella was spared jail time for pleading guilty to manslaughter. The judge sentenced her to 10 years on probation. Cristian's sexual assault charge was dropped due to insufficient evidence, as the court had dismissed his interrogation recording on the grounds that he didn't understand his constitutional rights. However, he was found guilty of first-degree murder. Despite being tried as an adult, the judge sentenced him to a juvenile life sentence. With court orders to keep his distance from minors and not contact his surviving siblings, the 19-year-old Cristian was released in July 2018 and kept on probation.
This Sunday, his 19th birthday, after serving 7 years in jail.